Good afternoon, Dr. Dave. How are you doing, sir?
Most fantastic there, Dr. Joe. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. It's our most exciting day of the week.
It is. It is. Absolutely.
So, thank you all for tuning in, our audience of viewers and listeners. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, where me and Dave just love to rattle on about these topics that hopefully help you to progress in your personal or professional career. So, with that, we've done the pleasantry, so we want to jump right into the topic. And in our normal fashion, one of the host or co-host introduces the topic and then quickly passes it on to the other. So that is my um, intention or purpose today, and that is to introduce our topic, which is reinventing the wheel and what that means to me and Dr. Dave. So, Dave, what does that mean to you? What speaks to you when we talk about reinventing the wheel?
Reinventing the wheel. That's a good question, Joe. Reinventing the wheel. It reminds me of taking the long scenic route. Not that that resonates with anything that we've ever done in the past several dozen times in our
Don't know what you're
career.
talking about.
Yeah, so we talk about so often about don't reinvent the wheel, but we're actually going to address reinventing the wheel this time. So,
Yep,
not taking that long scenic route, it can be painful. There are pros and cons to it. But when we talk about reinventing the wheel, the general guidance is do not reinvent the wheel. And
right.
there is some rationale and logic behind that. It's why reinvent the wheel? Because it's already been made. Okay, it's been made
Yep,
out of stone, it's been made out of steel and wood and rubber and all kinds of other foam and plastic. So why reinvent it? We already have it done. It's the process is good. Let's just keep going. That's good advice. Don't do it. We've already done it. We've mastered it. But why would you want to reinvent the wheel? Because you've done it, it's already been mastered. Is there something that we missed? Is there a better way to do it? We can look at putting objects into outer space. We are we reinventing the wheel? Absolutely, every time, because we haven't matured enough to get to that phase to where we can say we've done it. We've hit light speed. Not even close. Not even close right now. So we're reinventing the wheel as making these incremental changes. And so in some cases, you do want to reinvent the wheel, or you might want to consider reinventing the wheel. So for me, when I think about reinventing the wheel throughout my career, it's always been, Dave, don't reinvent the wheel. It's like, well, why not reinvent it? If we can do something better, what's the argument? What's the issue? So there may be some challenges with that. Maybe you do have a great idea. Maybe you do have a better way to do it. Maybe you have a more efficient or cost-effective way. So what's stopping you from going there? Is it the environment? Is it the culture? Is it the workplace? Is it personal limitations, professional limitations, financial limitations, limitations? What is stopping you from making something better? What is stopping you from maintaining the status quo and taking that next giant leap to do something great and wonderful? So I'm gonna, and from a personal perspective, we can look at it as, don't reinvent the wheel, Dave. Just go to school. Don't stay in school. But what if school is not for you? Or what if
right.
not
Yeah,
going to school is not for you? You want to get out of the trades, or you want to get into white collar, or you want to get out of white collar into the trades, or something more creative or self-sustaining for you. What does that look like? You may have to pause what your current goals are and think about that critical self-reflection that Joe and I talk about so often, and think about, am I really where I want to be? Have I gotten as far as I want to go in this career, and I'm ready to do something different? That's when you reinvent the wheel. Or in this case, the wheel is a metaphor for you. You reinvent yourself. So those are some things to think about. I'm going to pause because I've been yammering on for several minutes. So, Dr. Joe, what are your thoughts?
I think this is a good topic because you said it at the very beginning. In most cases, we tell people not to reinvent the wheel. Something already exists, so just use it. And it's funny that now that we're talking about it, the idea that you don't reinvent the wheel makes sense to a degree. right?
Hmm.
And we
Yeah.
talk about this, in previous episodes, even, through most of our episodes, the idea that even if I gave you my blueprint of how I got to where I am today, right? It is not going to apply exactly to someone
Right.
else. So in essence, they are going to have to reinvent the wheel, just to your
Yeah.
point, because we want to make it better. We want to make it apply to us. And you
Hmm.
said it too, because we're thinking in terms of, we're reinventing ourselves or reinventing the path that we want to take.
Hmm.
So, again, we like to say, don't reinvent the wheel. And that makes sense because we don't want you to, if something is already established and it works, go ahead and use that piece of it. But at the same time, think about how it's going to apply to you, how you can make it better. How are you going to make it to where it makes sense to you? Because again, all blueprints out there, all templates out there are made to be adjusted, changed to suit your purposes. So when you talk about reinvent the wheel, it's probably more in reference to, take the bulk of whatever that process is or whatever you're trying to accomplish,
Hmm.
use those things that apply to you, and then discard those things that don't. So I think when think about reinventing the wheel, that's what we're referring to because we've said it. Again, I just mentioned it. If I give you the blueprint that I use to get, through my education, my military career, it will not apply to you. So you are going to have to reinvent the wheel on certain areas. So, in personal life, that's evident because if you're always thinking about personal development and being a lifelong learner, again, you're going to apply those things that matter to you and make sense to you, which is, again, maybe the template that you use to get to a certain level or certain degree. But you're again are going to use those things that make sense to you and discard those that
Hmm.
don't, because it doesn't make sense for you to follow a template. You said it earlier. You want a certification, you want to change jobs, so it wouldn't make sense to continue doing the same thing. You could again start down the path of, okay, this is how I get to this level, but this doesn't apply to me, so I'm going to have to shift gears a little bit. So that's where that reinventing the wheel that applies to you makes sense. So
Hmm.
it's just that idea of keeping your mind open to the possibilities. And if you do that, you're always really going to be looking to reinvent the wheel because even though something has worked in the past, there's probably ways we can improve it, make it
Hmm.
better, especially when it comes to you because you know what you need or what you want to gain out of whatever situation. So it's up to you to reinvent the wheel in your favor for
Yeah.
you to apply it the way you need it to. So I'll
Oh,
just
yeah. 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 No, I like where you're going with this. And I like to toss out some somewhat generic examples, but I love reading about people that have done just that. They've reinvented the wheel for themselves. You look at childhood, it can be actors and actresses. They could be childhood stars, and then they go a different direction. There's one in, there's several individuals who've gone into the military and totally abandoned the acting career because it's not what
right,
they wanted to do. There are other people that have gone on to get involved in philanthropy, because they've done what they wanted to do. Some of them became very wealthy, some of them didn't. So it's not based upon the monetary value, it's based upon what's inside you, what's driving you, what do you
right,
really want to do. And sometimes these things that we do are part of our conditioning as we grew up. You hear about the stories, oh, I'm a farmer, my family, my grandfather's a farmer, my great grandfather, back several generations, we've all been farmers. And then that one person breaks the mold and goes to school.
right.
Or you
Yep,
hear about these families that are of doctors and dentists, and then instead of following in their footsteps, they go into acting or athletics, or
right,
become a comedian, or they go into corporate or something like that. They break the cycle or the molds, and it's not a good or bad, it's just it is what it is, because they have to do what's right for them. And I love reading about those stories because sometimes those folks like you and I have come from very humble beginnings, and they realize that that dream that they had, they've achieved it. Maybe it's not what they thought it was. Maybe they got out of that experience what they needed to, and they're ready to go on to something new, maybe to become an artist or a consultant or a teacher or whatever. There are athletes that have been in, how many athletes and entertainers have we heard about that are so successful that they open up something else, like a restaurant chain or something like that.
Right, right,
They diversify their interests, or you know entertainers that buy sports teams, or it's all kinds of things. It's not, again, it's not about the monetary. It's about what are you passionate about? What do you need to do to get to where you want to be? And like I said, maybe you have been there and done that. You've gotten to where you want to be and you don't want to do it anymore, or it's not what you thought it was, or your fun meter is pegged, as I like to say. You've done it. You've been there, done that. You got the t-shirt and you want to try something new. That's what it's about. Or you try something new and you don't like it. You don't have to stay that course. You can reinvent the wheel. You can reinvent yourself to figure out what you do want to do, personally and professionally.
No, Dave, you touched on, the one thing that I think is very important in this, and you said the purpose. You find your purpose. So you may be going down a certain path, and you go to reinvent yourself because you realize that's not what you want to do. And me and you have this conversation all the time,
Mm-hmm.
about, well, we did reinvent ourselves. Like you
We
said,
did,
we both
absolutely.
started with, so I can relate to the scenario about, my parents not having the education level I do, but knowing that I was able to do more and to get to a different level, not, just resolving to the fact that, okay, I grew up in this type of environment, this is the way I'm going to stay.
Mm-hmm.
But reinventing myself, reinventing the wheel, changing who I am, my personal brand, where I came from to where I am today. And I've met so many people. Like you said, I actually knew a good friend in the military. And you mentioned the one about the doctors. His whole family was doctors, and professional people. And he started going down that path of, okay, I got to be just like my brother, like my dad. They're dentists, they're doctors. And he did 1 year of school and said, you know what, this is not for me. And he joined the military. He put all that
Mm-hmm.
aside, joined the military, and reinvented himself. And now he's retired from the military and everything else. But his parents, they already had a life set for him, or
Mm-hmm.
they already had a plan for him, and he realized that wasn't what he wanted to do. So I think
Right.
that's really important, that as we think about reinventing the wheel, or things, it goes back to that same thing, that use those things that apply to you. So again, he had a perfect example of how to become a doctor, how to be a dentist, but that wasn't his passion. That wasn't what
Mm-hmm.
he wanted to do. So he took those things that applied to him, got what he needed, and went down his own path.
Yeah.
That's why I really like, again, we've said over and over again, a lot of people have said, don't reinvent the wheel. But there should be a but, or there
Yeah.
should
Or an
be
asterisk or
however,
something,
or
a
something,
footnote.
right, that says, okay, don't, just repeat the same old thing. Use those things that are applicable to your
Mm-hmm.
situation, to your whatever you're doing, and then make them better, make them
Mm-hmm.
yours. I think that's the most important thing, is
Mm-hmm.
to make them
Yeah.
yours, because in someone else's eyes it may not be better, but
Yeah.
if it applies to your situation, it makes your situation better, or makes it to, where you want it, then it makes sense for you to reinvent the wheel in your
Mm-hmm.
favor.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the important piece we're trying to get out of this, is that it may not align with, whatever the previous iteration of it was,
Mm-hmm.
but the idea is that you don't want to just continue to repeat and duplicate that exact same thing. It
Right.
doesn't make sense. It's, if it doesn't apply to you, and we say this all the time, take the pieces that make sense to you, and you may end up with this whole, started off as one, direction or one thing, and end up with multiple legs, multiple
Mm-hmm.
layers of things that now you've accumulated, that now you have definitely changed that original wheel,
Right.
and,
Right.
and it looks totally different. But that's what it should be. It should be, you take it, refine it, add to it, subtract, whatever it takes, to get you where you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
Even when we think about in organizations and businesses, that, as technology develops and grows, you can only use parts and pieces of that. So a process that was created 10 years ago with different technology. So again, you can
Yeah.
use the basic template on the process, but more than likely you're going to have to add some things to it, subtract some things. You're going to have to bring in different, processes that may interact with it. But the
Mhm.
idea is that you started with some type of template. You didn't just
Mhm.
start at the drawing board and start throwing darts and say, okay, let's create this whole new thing. Because typically there are probably going to be some reusable pieces
Right.
in whatever you're doing. It's just not staying stuck to those original pieces, but having the flexibility to say, okay, that worked then, but it doesn't apply now, or it
Yeah.
will not fit the new thing. So I think that's important to think about. Just again, you want to not reinvent the wheel to the start over. With in some case, you
Yeah.
might have to.
Yeah, I think I know where you're going. You don't want to start reinvent the wheel to the point of it being a detriment.
Right, right, yeah,
So yeah, and it's some folks, maybe single parents or whatever, maybe, you haven't made the best decisions either professionally or personally. You can break that cycle and reinvent
right,
yourself. It happens all the time. You hear about younger people in entertainment that make some really bad mistakes, but some of them turn themselves around. They reinvent themselves. They reinvent the wheel and take that negative and learn from it. And I saw something online the other day. It said there are no mistakes that you can't learn from, or something to that effect.
right,
It's like, so
right,
don't look at it as a mistake or failure as something bad, because you should have learned something from that. And that's I think really important to think about is, if you're not happy, or you're not content, or you're not where you want to be, you know utilize utilize yourself, change you can change you can change your environment, you can change the culture or the workplace in which you're at currently. You can change the place where you as an individual personally are. If you don't like it, you can get a
right,
different degree, you can get a different certification, you can learn a new skill, you can learn a new something, or improve upon something that you do enjoy and make it work to your benefit.
right,
And sometimes people realize that it's not about the almighty dollar, it's about the internal happiness that brings you the greatest gratification.
right,
And I'm going to plug us for a moment, because we do this not because we're making huge and vast amounts of money on this. We're doing it because we don't want you all to go through what we had to go through, and we want to provide some advice and guidance to help you understand that there are ways to change, or to make things better, or to make things different, that align better with who you are and what you want to do. So when we talk about reinventing the wheel, it's very imperative to understand that piece that you were just talking about, Joe, that you don't reinvent the wheel to the point of it being a detriment, but drill down as far as you need to find a new point to pivot or spring from, to get you
right,
to where you, or at least get you in the right direction to where you want to go.
right,
Surround yourself with the right people, with the right environment, with the right place. You can do it. You absolutely can. Joe and I did. We could have stayed status quo and stayed, and that's that vicious cycle of where we were when we grew up, and things would be dramatically different, I would wager. But we
right,
chose to do certain things and to break certain cycles, to reinvent ourselves, to break out of those areas. And sometimes it can be really tough, but it can be done. It's just, how bad do you want it? What are you willing to do to make it happen?
absolutely. And Dave, I'll just touch back on what you referred to as far as me and you doing this show. It that's exactly it. We've done over 70 episodes, and the idea is that we don't expect anyone, anyone in our audience to take everything that we uh, said in these podcasts or mentioned or referred to and take that as the gospel or the
Mhm.
word to get them to the next level, because we've said it many times before. Take what you need out of these episodes. If you only gain one um nugget out of all these episodes, then it was still well worth it, because
Yeah.
we don't expect to be able to hand you this blueprint, give you all this information and knowledge, you run with it, and then you end up, just very similar to me and Dave, and the similarities that we have. But that's not the case. We want you to take what makes sense to you, and take it, apply it, and again, you just help you not take that extended, view or trip that me and Dave took, but maybe get you there a little bit quicker or a little bit sooner. So that's what the whole idea behind this podcast is. The same thing is that we're offering you some things that helped us, and maybe it'll help you too. But like we said many times, take the things that you need, take the things that make sense, take the things that apply to you in your world,
Mhm.
because again, we're all on our own journeys, but we all can, win by gaining something from one another. And me and Dave was talking about this earlier, just the collaboration piece, just meeting people with similar things in mind, or going down similar paths or totally different paths, but being
Mhm.
able to gain something from each of those um, r- relationships that you built or learned or taken from. So that's what this whole thing is about. Is again, we're hoping that you take whatever we've laid out and apply it to your situation, to where you're trying to go. And if one of these things or topics or areas that we've touched on has helped you, then we've achieved our goal. And that's exactly what this is about.
Yeah, and I like how over the course of our episodes you brought up the idea of a blueprint, because it's
Right.
just that, it is a foundation. You can call it an outline, whatever. You're if you're going to school and college, that it's a program of courses that you follow. It's a
Right.
blueprint because each student's going to get something different. And then just like in the military, just because you both go into the military doesn't mean you're going to be doing the exact same job. And if it is the exact same job, it's still not the exact same for each experience
Right.
for each one of you. It's going to be completely different. You're going to get something different out of it. And that's really cool because when we talk about having that blueprint, having the knowledge and I'm going to go so far as to say the self permission to be creative and flexible with that blueprint is what this is about. To Joe's point, 70 plus episodes, and if you're getting one nugget here and there, then you're creating your own blueprint off of someone
Right.
else's blueprint, and you're just figuring out what's going to work for you and what's not going to work for you, or maybe it's not going to work for you right now, but you can use it later.
Right.
So again, when we talk about reinventing the wheel, sometimes you have to do it, and sometimes it's not by choice. Sometimes it is what it is. If you're a displaced worker, you've changed careers, you've retired, you want to get back into work. Maybe you've been a single parent, you want to get back into the industry. Maybe you're tired of the corporate, rat race, and you want to get out and do something different. You don't have to ask anyone to do this. You can just do it.
Right.
And if it's done for you, maybe that's a sign for you to think about. Maybe this is my time to reinvent myself, reinvent my own wheel to do something better. And that's what a lot of people have done over the past several years. So, as bad as the situations have been, you know, over the last couple of years with the pandemic, things there is a silver lining if you look for it and you think about it. Maybe you weren't as happy as you thought you were, or maybe you thought you were happy but you're not, or maybe you realize how happy you were. What are you going to do to get back into that environment, or maybe an equal environment or a better environment? So there's all these things to consider and pieces, but reinventing the wheel is not a bad thing unless it's like to Joe's point, unless you do it to the point of it being a detriment. So,
Right. Well, you brought up another point about the idea that you have permission to change your will or to, adjust it as needed. And you touched on it earlier about the whole idea about the education. So, and I know I mentioned this in previous episodes,
mhm,
but when I first, was working on my doctorate or started down that path, I was originally going to get my doctorate in IT management because that was the path I had chosen. That's what I thought I was going to be doing. That's where I thought my passion lied. But I quickly learned after a couple of classes in that wasn't my passion. It was
mhm,
more about leadership, and so I chose the path of organizational leadership versus IT management. So again, I allowed myself to think about, okay, is this my passion? Is this my purpose? Is this what I really want to do? And after that reflection, I changed my major, and that was pretty drastic for me to do that far into it because my undergrad was in IT, my MBA was in IT, and then I was going to continue that on, but then I totally shifted gears and went into organizational leadership because I did just what you said. I gave myself permission to, change my will, change the direction I was headed. And so I think that's important, just that piece, that people understand. It's yours. It's your
Yeah.
will. And
You
that's
don't
what I
have to
mean.
stay with the crowd. You can diverge
Right,
from the
right.
crowd and maybe meet up in another place, or maybe you diverge and meet a different crowd.
Right. It's just, again, that idea that it's still yours, and I think that's where we get hung up a lot, where we either try to please people or appease people, but the reality is it's yours. It's
Mhm.
you're going to be your life at the end of it. Like I mentioned a friend earlier, where his parents wanted him and his family wanted him to go down the path of being a doctor or some type of physician or something like that, and he chose, I don't want to go down that path. I want to do something different. And that's what he did. He went outside the norm, just like me and you did, changed our environment, changed our trajectory to a different, level that suited us.
Mhm.
So that's again what we're referring to in this whole, in this podcast, is the idea that, uh, we've said in the past, and a lot of people say in the past, don't reinvent the wheel. And we're still saying that too, to the point though that you take, those things that apply to you, use that basic template, and then from there start to build what your beginning looks like, or what your will or your direction looks like. That's what we're saying. Again, you
Mhm.
typically got to have a starting point. So I'd say that's where you don't, deviate completely. You may
Right.
just, again, you may have a heading on a page, and that may
Yeah,
be
sometimes that's
the
where
start.
sometimes that's a starting point.
That's the
An
template that you
idea on a
use.
napkin.
Right. And then it turns into yours,
Yeah.
because that's what it's all about. Is it doesn't make sense. And we learned that with our kids, even with with the education and things like that. What we suggested or thought we wanted for them, that wasn't going to be beneficial to them if they go through 4 years of college and then come out and say, hey, I didn't want to do this, or I don't want to do this. So
Right.
that's the same thing we're saying when, it's up to you. You got the template. Now it's up to you to kind of fill in what your will is going to look like.
Right.
Um, so I'll pause there to see if you have
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a
any.
couple minutes left. So yeah, I think we've covered this one pretty well. I think that some of the key takeaways are, give yourself permission. Reinventing the wheel is okay. Again, as long as it's not to the point of it being a detriment. Um, you can make these decisions and, really just reflect on what you want to do and where you want to be. And are you evaluate your current situation. And if you're not happy or content with it, or maybe you just want to try, maybe you are happy and content and you just want to try something different, do it. Nothing is stopping you from trying something different, because reinventing that wheel might take you in a new direction that you'll be even happier with. So,
Right.
that's all I have to say about that for right now.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Dave. Well, I'll just finish it up with, again, we all would like to have some type of template in front of us, but I think one of the things we touched on earlier is the fact that it's all about learning from those previous mistakes. That's why we don't want to reinvent the wheel, is because we want to take what was already learned and what was already, previous, and then we take those learnings, apply it to new situations, and then we reinvent our own wheel. So again, those things are there in front of us. It's just up to us to decipher what that new thing looks like, what your will looks like, what your direction. And like we said before, take those things that apply to you, that's going to make whatever your situation is make sense to you, because they said it earlier, you have the authority, the permission to make those decisions for yourself. So with that, we will finish off this episode. Again, thanks for our audience for tuning in and listening or watching us on the channel. Hopefully, you're gaining something out of this. And if you are, please share, like, pass it on to friends, family that may
Absolutely.
benefit from this. Like I said, you may have watched all episodes and maybe only gained one thing, and hopefully that's the case, that you're gaining more than one thing. But if you've only gained one thing, again, it's still a
Better
win.
than nothing.
It's just, again, we enjoy doing this, providing whatever we can to help you get to that next level. So, with that, I want to encourage you to continue being your not so ordinary you.